Hello, good evening. It is Monday night, May 6th, 2024. My birthday was May 4th, and I am so happy to have all the birthday wishes that everyone has taken the time to give me on social media. I really appreciate it. Love was needed. Love was received. I appreciate all the love and all the happy birthdays and well wishes and the prayers, especially the prayers. You can't miss the prayers. Um, but I really appreciate everything everybody did to make my birthday a little bit happier than it was, last year. Um, Last year I had my father around and I just messing with him back and forth. So this year was a little bit more difficult, not having the chance to mess with him and joke around with him and just make fun and all that sort of thing that I'm accustomed to doing. So I really appreciate all the birthday wishes this year. um, this is a live interactive program that I do. I volunteer my time to help with the global mental health awareness. Hi, Sean Anthony. Thank you for coming. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Hey, Jackie, I appreciate you coming. I've been so busy lately. I've been working my buns off, but that's what I do. That's what I do. So I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I've been a little busy. So I haven't been online as much, and it's been around my birthday time and trying to adjust and everything. So I'm doing that on top of trying to work my butt off, stay busy. But anyway, um, today I wanted to talk a lot about global mental health crisis. Hey, I get it. Um, Indeed, granddad will be missed. Yeah, I know it's hard to remember that he's gone um, already. So that's one of the adjustments that I'm trying to, focus on remembering. Um, for example, it's like global mental health crisis. How does that affect me? What is that about? Well, I mentioned that I was in a PhD program. I completed the program. Um, but while I was in the program, there was so much stress that the people in the program was causing, because it's no such thing as a predatory school. It is only a such thing as predatory people. So they prey on you because, well, some people, that's just how they feel like um, they supposed to act or behave or whatever. And despite all the stress they was causing, I was really blessed to stay positive, stay lifted. And I really appreciate the prayers and all the love from everybody, because that really did help and it encouraged me to, stay lifted. Also the fish tank, just watching that. But the reason why it's important to talk about global mental health crisis is because a lot of times we're perpetuating this crisis and we have no idea why. And we don't even understand how it's affecting us. For example, while I was in that PhD program and they were putting me under all that stress, or trying to put me under a lot of stress, and I was still travailing to accomplish the goals despite not having any help. And that's what we are seeing a lot in these times. People are travailing through a lot of challenges and they don't have help. And it's like, oh, well, some people, they automatically resort to um, dark mentality. And they may not be aware that they're having this dark mentality, like, oh, well, it's useless, it's hopeless, I'm just going to give up, I'm going to go somewhere else and do something else. But it's not everybody. Everybody doesn't have that mindset. So like for me, I don't have that mindset. So when someone says, oh, you're still here, you're still there, and it was wow, because that was what the academic advisor said. Wow, you're still here? You like what? The word choice that you use, and it is contributing to a decline in global mental health. And it's like people say these things to people, and then they act like they don't have a clue why global mental health is an issue, because you're triggering people. Then you act like you didn't say what you said to trigger them, like you had no idea that what you were saying was going to contribute to a much larger problem. Let's put it that way. So with the temperature of the mental health of the world right now, you don't know if you're holding the last straw. You don't know what straw they on. And it's like you could be holding the last straw. And it's like you don't know. And you say something that triggers that person, because we've talked a lot on this show about triggers. And how random it could seem. But those are factors that contribute to global mental health crisis. And then we see how somebody is triggered. And a lot of times we're seeing a lot of the triggers nowadays in these churches. There was this priest who was up giving his sermon, and a young man came up and just started stabbing him. You don't know what straw people are on. There's a perpetual of this dark spirited mentality where everybody's sharing all of these, what's supposed to be shared as being funny, but it's really mean spirited. And it's like, oh, places where people would go to worship, instead of it being there's positive light shed on it, it's more controversial and people being mean-spirited about how things are going on. For example, I'm not saying which way or the other that I agree or disagree with certain pastors and their orthodoxy of their church. But if they're the head of the church and they're saying, well, in this worship center, we are going to praise and worship in the way that I say, not the way the Spirit is leading you, but the way I say. And then somebody, because they're conditioned to behave in the manner in which they were told to behave, they don't read the room, and they're making these loud outbursts. And then the preacher says, be quiet, we worshiping, be quiet. And now everybody's in a tizzy because you don't understand how that was a trigger to someone else to behave in the manner in which they did, to make him behave the way he did. So it's I'm not going to mention who it is. Everybody knows who it is. It's going viral, and I don't like to put people out there like that. But this young preacher told a young worshiper to be quiet, and everybody's upset about it. But the problem is, the global mental health crisis has put a whole lot of people in these churches and in these centers of worship, because they're on their last resort. They don't know what else to do. So they go to these places to worship, but you tell them how, and you tell them how to do this and how to do that, how they should be. And then when they, can't read the room because those signals change so often, then you end up embarrassing that person, because they were conditioned to do what you wanted them to do. And now it's a problem. And it's like, if this person's been praising and worshiping in this loud manner before, and you never said anything, why is it a problem now? Because there you go with the contribution to the global mental health crisis. People are getting these mixed signals, and they don't know what to do, because the one moment, everything's okay if you do this. The next moment, it's not okay, and you flip the script before anybody knew what to do. Now, I'm not saying I'm on board with either, the young lady being loud and having an outburst, let alone conditioning people in the way that you want them to behave, as opposed to just, in a place of worship, it's supposed to be more about the Spirit leading you. And we have seen a lot of people who have these global mental health awareness. They go to church or they go to some place of worship, and then they find that they're being conditioned in a certain way. And then it's like, it's conflicting with their ability to thrive mentally. And instead of them going somewhere else where it may be a little bit more in alignment with their ability to discern that this is a place where they would like to praise and worship, they stay with where they are because they're at their last straw. They don't have any other resort. This is their last resort, and that's why they're there. And that's why they were able to be easily swayed and conditioned to do whatever you wanted them to do when it came to praising and worshiping. The problem with it is that it was gaslighting. It was a sense of gaslighting, and because of it, it caused unnecessary embarrassment for both the pastor or the head of the church or whatever you want to call it, and the young worshiper. And now everybody's talking about it on social media and it's going viral, especially within the church. And a lot of times people don't understand, why is the church going viral for all of these controversial type things? And it's because there's a global mental health crisis and everybody is turning to something that they feel like can help them. A lot of people are turning to places of worship and ministry because if you can't find people helpful, then people tend to turn to a spiritual transcendence so that they can be elevated from the problem instead of continuing on to travail through it and find no help. So when you have people who are going to these churches, you don't know what their mental state is. You don't know what's going to be the last straw, and if you're holding that last straw, and what's going to be the consequence of you dropping that last straw in that person's wheelbarrow, in their wheelhouse. You don't know. And a lot of times we have no idea how it's contributing to a global mental health crisis. Well, one is we see a lot of times people are more obese than they were 20, 30 years ago. It has a great deal to do with the fact that you're stressed and your mental health is not elevated as it should be, because there's so much gaslighting, there's so many triggers, and everybody's like, well, everything's a trigger, yeah, because when you at your last straw and when you on the edge, everything can be a trigger because you're at your wit's end. You're tired of all the gaslighting. You're tired of all the people trying to manipulate you and try to get you to do whatever they want you to do, as opposed to being more in alignment with some sort of formal logic that you are aware is logical. For example, when you're born with formal logic, and that formal logic helps you to understand right from wrong and what's dangerous from what's safe. And when you grow up to communicate effectively, you already have established that formal logic. Then someone comes along and says, oh no, do it this way. And you say, why would I do it that way? That doesn't seem right. And they say, well, this is what everyone's doing. Well, everyone, who is everyone? Everyone here in this location. So you do it for as long as you can. And then when you can't do it anymore, you relocate to another location. You may find that they're doing the same thing, so you may not stay. Then you go to another location. You may find they're not doing the same thing, but it's still not in alignment with your formal logic. This formal logic that I'm talking about is the reason that the conflict with the formal logic is the reason why there's so many contributions to a global mental health crisis that's causing weight gain. It's causing the body to become ill. It's causing a disruption with the critical thinking skills. It's causing a disruption in people's relationships and being logical and reasonable. Let's put it that way. People are unable to be reasonable because their formal logic is so skewed. And why is it so skewed? Because everybody's trying to fit in with this place and they don't fit in with that place. They move to another one and then they move to another one. But a lot of it is not in alignment with your formal logic, which you built from being born all the way up to the day where you decide that you can make decisions on your own. And the problem is a lot of people, they don't want you to be conditioned to make decisions on your own. They only want you to be conditioned to make decisions based on how their motives. Let's put it that way. They want you to be motivated in the manner in which which is in alignment with their motives. You don't know what their motives are. You don't know what their true motives are, because oftentimes people are not necessarily telling you the forthcoming information required for you to discern whether you are willing to go along with whatever they saying. And you don't find out that fact until it's too late, until you've invested a great deal of time in that situation. And now you're there because you don't want to have wasted your time. A lot of people waste a lot of time that way. For example, I saw a post on Facebook. It was like, as a matter of fact, my husband posted it. It was a young lady who was saying, I don't need my children's father. I can raise the kids by myself. We're perpetuating memes and videos like that as if they are the face. They are the spokesperson for single parenting, and they are not. And that message is contrary to formal logic, which formal logic is saying there's a reason that man isn't there, and it has maybe a little bit to do with her attitude and her behavior. But she's stating that her behavior was a result of his absence, not before his absence. So when people put these videos out and saying, I can do about, and then they're commenting on the young lady like, she's the problem. She's the problem. You're the problem because you did not understand that this is a video of someone who is hurt. This is someone who is on their last straw, at wit's end. Their mental health is at risk, and they are trying their hardest to combat that mental health problem that the circumstances is causing. And instead of being depressed about it, she's trying to, be upbeat and put positivity out into the atmosphere because the father is not there. So when she said what she said, it was like, what I saw was another woman who was hurt because the children's father was not in the life of her and her child. So she's like, and I've seen so many women do it. They say, well, we don't need him. We'll just do it by ourselves. And you got to stay positive about it, because if you don't stay positive about it, you'll become depressed about it. And it's a situation you cannot change. So there's no sense in being depressed about situations you cannot positively change, in the manner in which you can say, okay, let me motivate him to stay. If he doesn't want to stay, he's not going to stay. And it's more to it than that female, the mother, that's keeping the father away, because there's laws and there's limitations to what people can do. If he's not in that child's life, it could be because he doesn't want to be in that child's life, because the mother can't stop you from being in that child's life. So there's that part. So a lot of men are choosing not to be a part of their children's life, and they can say it's for whatever reason they want. But the statistics that they were talking about in those comments were statistics that were skewed. They're reporting information in a manner which is not in alignment with formal logic. A lot of times single women are or single parents are single parents because the people choose to go and do other things, and the law is not necessarily enforcing you stay with the person. They're still single, and now the father has to try to maintain the household he's in and still take care of the kids he had outside of his household. That's that. And there's no and the only reason why the statistics is showing such a negative view of women, mothers who are struggling in the low income and poverty rates with the child, is because more often than not, the mother is the one that's raising the child, and the father is he doesn't have the child. But if you were to do a statistics that show single fathers, what's the poverty rate for single fathers? It's a lot of single fathers out there. I had a really good friend, and she was raised by her father when I was in high school. And I was shocked because I was like, don't fathers leave? Aren't fathers the ones that leave? And that was a false narrative that was perpetuated, because it's not like that. Sometimes fathers, they pass. Sometimes fathers, they find that the woman that they had children with is not the woman they want to stay with. And it's a struggle. But there's also women who leave the father with the children. Are they in the poverty rate? What's the statistics on that? So when you don't have the statistics that's showing both perspectives, it's obvious that the perspective was put out there to shine a dim light on a situation. And that's why you see so many viral videos that's speaking so negatively. And these negative videos are contributing to a global mental health crisis. A lot like the viral video with the preacher and the young lady who was worshiping too loud. What you say, Jackie? She was crying out. Yeah, and it's like you tell these people to worship and cry out and make all of these noises and fall out and shout and dance in the spirit and praise dancers and all of this sort of thing. But then you get mad at them when they're doing exactly what you taught them to do, what you conditioned them to do, what you expect them to do. And it's like you cannot judge when people are on their last straw. So you shouldn't be in a position where you're telling people how they should or should not behave. It was already outrageous to me when people were more in agreement with ordaining people who were not necessarily in alignment with what would be considered the hierarchy of that particular faith. I hope I said that nicely. I hope I put that. I'm trying so hard not to be controversial. Just because at one point a person may have exhibited that they had a calling, that calling may have left that person when they made a few decisions in their life that was outside of the full alignment of the hierarchy of that faith. And from there on, you can start to see a decline in that spiritual walk. But you continue to support that person's leadership. Then you want to ridicule them as if you don't already know that there's some issues already. There's some underlying issues already. But because of popularity and controversy going viral, we do this. And we have no idea how we are contributing to a global mental health crisis. It's like now we're seeing more people at wit's end, and they're responding in a manner in which can be fatal. On the last episode, I spoke about a professor at Lincoln University who unfortunately made fatal decisions because she was at wit's end and she didn't have any help. And she was a sorority sister, and I'm really sorry for all the sisters in the sororities, because this doesn't just affect that one AKA house, it affects all the sorority houses. We are not approaching this global mental health crisis in the manner in which we really need to, because we're failing to acknowledge that this mental health crisis affects all of us, even if we're a little bit stronger than those who are more obviously dealing or combating with these mental triggers. We still need to address it, even if we're appearing to be stronger. Like I said, I've come on the show on a couple of occasions and stated, you know, that even with the PhD program, because sometimes people, they think, oh, you know, because I smile a lot, because I joke a lot, that there's nothing to be serious about. I have a lot to be serious about. And yes, I'm fully aware, yet I'm mindful, because I understand when you put those things out into the atmosphere, when you speak it out into the atmosphere, there can be either one, your problem, or two, your solution. And I would rather speak positivity into the atmosphere so that everything in the atmosphere that's positive can move towards continuing to perpetuate a positive mental health, or at least increase my mental health, so that it's at such a high level when I get triggered, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't have the effect that it would had my mental health been a little lower than it was before I was triggered. That's really all we can hope for in the world, is that we improve people's mental health in such a way that if when they're triggered, it's not a fatal trigger. It's not the final straw. It is another day that they can deal with whatever it was that triggered them before. That's why it's so important to address this global mental health crisis, because there's so many triggers and so many different aspects in our lives. We don't understand how it's affecting us or the people around us. For example, when I was going through all of that stress that they were trying to put me on under, um, I was swelling up, I was gaining weight, and a lot of, things that I just wasn't, giving very much attention to, because I was focused. I was singularly focused on all the things that I needed to accomplish, as opposed to being more mindful about my mental health. And I understand that that's a lot of people's testimony. It's not just me. That's why I'm sharing it, so I can talk about it in a way that may impact other people, but I'm not talking about those people. So we can all examine ourselves and correct ourselves, as opposed to somebody else embarrassing us in the open and correcting us in the open, which, yeah, it's embarrassing. But if you're in a particular group and you step out of line, the head of that group is going to check you. It is going to put you in place. And that's just the way, any organization or any place will be, any household, anything, a relationship, whatever it is, that's just the norm. However, we do things decently and in order when we are talking about a spiritual way, when we are talking about a business manner or business etiquette, where we conduct ourselves in a manner in which is more palatable to avoid negative consequence. A lot of times people don't care about negative consequence when they're dealing with a global mental health crisis. This is not the first time we've encountered a global mental health crisis. There has been World War One, World War Two, Vietnam War. These were times of a global mental health crisis. We have endured a number of global mental health crises. What have we learned from those things? And that's what we really need to evaluate and revisit and try to grow from, instead of burning the books that's telling us how we got through. How did we overcome? Stop burning history books that's telling you how you overcame. But yeah, those books that's twisted the narrative for the last 10 years. Burn those books. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, compare it. Read those history books that they're burning. What's being said in those books? This is another factor of contributing to global mental health crisis. Schools are supposed to be a safe space. It's supposed to be a space where you are learning and growing. So it's not just growing intellectually, it's growing in maturity. And when you have books that are teaching you in a way that's not in alignment with facts of history, that's teaching you what we did before, what was the outcome of that, and what have we learned from this experience. When you have books that's not doing that, because we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, or we don't want to make one culture seem superior to the other culture, or one culture appear to be too mean-spirited to another culture, then we have the problem where it's like, this is making people unstable mentally, and it's causing outbursts in not just the church and the workplace. It's causing problems in schools, and it's difficult for people to find a safe place to go to school. It's difficult for people to find a safe place to go to worship. It's difficult to find a safe place to work. And now everything is becoming more remote, so that you are keeping your distance, your physical distance, from people in schools and places of worship and employment. And it's like, no one really knows what's going to happen should everyone become so isolated. If we don't get a handle on it, it's going to cause situations that were avoidable, and I would pray reversible. A lot of times we're not understanding how we're getting from A to B. How did we get to a place now where all these viral videos are showing such mean-spirited behavior, and we're still not making the connection to it causing or leading to or contributing to a global mental health crisis? These things aren't random. It's not happening in a vacuum. And it's like, oh, well, I don't know. You do know, because more often than not, especially now in this digital era, everything's online. You can find everything and anything online. I mentioned in a couple of episodes before this one, there are public records available of judgments against schools, and why that is the case. Schools touch everyone, every generation globally. It is not one place that you can go and they're not schooling. Even those indigenous tribes that we are not supposed to be messing with, but we're observing, they have a form of schooling, which was the original method of schooling. When you saw farmers educating their household on how to farm, they were teaching, they were schooling, and they were having more children so they can help the family on the farm, and they were teaching them. And then we decided to globalize farming. I'm skipping way ahead. And in doing so, we globalized education, but we did not continue to make it a safe space. Yet it's a requirement, it's a necessity to advance in life, but it's not a safe space. So, yes, oftentimes I do talk about schooling and why it is important to talk about the schools and how we're behaving and what we're seeing with these schools and how it's affecting um, the workforce, how it's affecting worship um, centers, and how it's affecting home life. Because school is a place where everybody goes. I don't care if you have money, don't have money, whatever. It's free, it's paid, it's elite, it's subpar. Everybody is going to school. And yet that is the most dangerous place in America for anybody to be. And we're not connecting the dots as to how this is contributing to a global mental health crisis. We're not considering how that's contributing to hazardous work environments. We're not considering how these problems are also making it far more difficult for any faith leader to help anyone who is having these mental health crises. We're not contributing to the solution without understanding how we're contributing to the problem. We got to stop perpetuating videos that are mean spirited. We need to stop perpetuating memes that are mean spirited. And I'm guilty of it too. I've posted videos where a young lady is saying something that I'm not in full alignment with, but she has some valid points. And the man also had some valid points. And they were both single parents raising their son. And they broadcasted their parenting battle in a video where they shared it on social media. And I shared it because they both had valid points, but they were talking at each other. So I'm talking about aspects of it. And that's the reason why I shared it. And a lot of people are doing the same thing. However, if the videos were to say things that's, a little bit more in alignment with helping to solve the problem instead of just pointing out the problem, then it would be more of a contribution to positive mental health as opposed to a mental health crisis, which is what we're seeing. But in that videos, you have both perspectives. But in most videos, you only have one person's perspective, and that person's perspective is oftentimes extremely dark. And it's then used as an example to be the face for the argument or for the discussion, and to point out how, oh, well, these women these days, they don't have any sense. And it's such an attack against these women without having more background information to understand that this person is speaking from a position of hurt, a position of being let down, a position of being at wit's end and don't have anyone that they can talk to get the help that they need. And when you further ridicule them because they put it on social media or whoever puts it on social media, then that's another straw, and it keeps building up. And that's why we're seeing so many times where we're having far more fatal decision making than we've ever seen in history, especially in the time of a pandemic that's an ailment, and we've had that before. And it's also compiled with people dying from famine. They're starving to death. People can't find gainful employment. You have so many problems already, and we're perpetuating this mean-spirited mentality. And then we turn around and wonder, how did we get to such a dark place? Well, could it be those videos? Could it be the music that's saying some really dark spirited things and mean spirited things, and really degrading? And a lot of times those are the music, those are the songs that's being aired often on, viral, whatever you want to call it. Back in the day, we called it, that was on the playlist. that was always hitting on the playlist. It was always repeating and repeating. And that sort of subliminal messaging, because that's what it is. That's what we called it in our day, in my day. Nowadays, they call it gaslighting, and it keeps evolving with the names. But the matter of the fact is, these things are contributing to a global mental health crisis, and we're acting like, the more intelligent we become, the less knowledgeable we become. I don't know if you noticed that, because it's like, how are you not making the connection? How are you not understanding that sharing these negative videos that you're not even in agreement with anyway, and it's only one perspective, not two persons' perspective? How are you not understanding that this is contributing to a larger issue where people are not recovering from, because they're making fatal decisions based on that situation? It was a time where some people um were it was a man who was had a podcast, and he was talking to a bunch of women, and he was really, really negatively ridiculing them and judging them openly, and like really rather prosecuting them as if they are the blame for all of their problems, and failing to mention that women are a help meet. That means there's someone that they have to help. Is a man there somewhere that they have to help. So, and then when you remove the man, they're a help meet to what? They're a help meet to what? They're not help. Okay, so we have all these men who are swaying in their leadership practices. We'll put it that way. And as a result, the helpmeet is confused about what she's supposed to do. So a lot of helpmeets who have the critical thinking skills and the spiritual elevation, what they have concluded is that they will be the helpmeet to the perfect man. Now, men are supposed to mark the perfect man. There was no perfect man, not Moses, not Noah. I don't know who else you would call, but that's why God said, oh, let me send Jesus. And Jesus was the perfect man, and then the example for other men to follow. And men was like, I'm not doing that, because, I want to have fun. I want to do something different. So the helpmeet had no other choice but to be just as wayward as the head. And it's like, now you complaining about her and her behavior, but you are the reason she's that way. However, the other women who have the intellectual ability and flexibility to be mindful and to forecast how they should behave, which is in more alignment with marking the perfect man. They are the helpmeet to that formula. A lot of times we're looking at it as it's detailed and this is the way. No, it's a formula, because the man is not acting in the way that they should according to that formula Jesus created. So let's call it a formula, since we're like, oh, well, I can't do exactly what he did because I can't walk on water. Nobody asking you to walk on water, just asking you to pay your bills on time, check on your kids, and yeah, maybe if you're in a relationship with me, give me a little bit of your loving, and that's about it. But men, instead of following that pattern, following that formula, they're like, no, you doing the most. You asking too much. So I'm going to go out here and do whatever I want to do. And then the men, in doing so, it's a consequence, because now the woman, the helpmeet, is like, oh, we being ratchet. I got you. I can help you with that. I'm going to level you up. Why? Because that's what women do. That's what helpmeets do. They level you up. They help you. So you're acting wayward. And she's like, okay, we go far left. You going left? I'm going to go far left. And I'm going to be increasingly controversial and increasingly ratchet, increasingly overwhelmingly up. What I'm saying is, a lot of times we're seeing that people are perpetuating the heads of these wayward behaviors. Instead of correcting them, they correct the woman. You need to correct the man and stop looking at the woman who is only the helpmeet and she is following the head. That, for example, that video that everybody's talking about with the preacher correcting the woman who is wailing out loud in worship, they want to correct the woman. You need to be correcting the head. You need to be correcting the man, because this is not his first time knowing that this woman is acting this way, but she's doing it for a reason. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of people throw the blame on the woman instead of understanding that she is the helpmeet. You have to correct the head so that the helpmeet will follow. So if the helpmeet is wayward, you have to start looking at the head. Look at the head. What happened? For example, in every video I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot, where a woman is saying she's discontent with the way a man is behaving, she is then stating or exhibiting that her actions are a result of, is in response to. It is not arbitrarily done. It's not done out of the blue. She didn't make the decision on her own. That's the problem I have. That's the problem with all of those videos where we are more focused. We're singularly focused on a woman who is responding, a woman who is reacting, a woman who is following a wayward pattern that was set by a man, and she didn't understand her assignment changed when Jesus made the way. God was he already looked down and said, look, Adam's not really doing so good. He needs some help. So it was clear already that man needed help. And then after quite a length of time of women trying to help man, God was like, look, I'm going to have to send Jesus, because this still isn't going all right, because the woman is only a helpmeet. And she silently sways the man to do the right thing. That's another problem that we're not understanding. All that clapping back, all that snapping off and sounding off. I don't do that. But when someone agitates me to the point where I have to speak over them in order to be heard, I'm going to do that. But it ends there. I'm not going to nag you. I'm not going to beat you down with it. I'm going to walk away. If I can walk away safely, I'm going to walk away. But a lot of times you get people and they're not going to safely walk away. They're going to back you up into a corner and they're going to make you have to defend yourself. And that's when you're going to find them in a viral video. But you're not going to see what happened before that. And then they're going to jump on it and harp on it, how that person was wrong because they shouldn't have did. And it's totally out of context. And because it's so many times we're perpetuating things out of context, we are making decisions that are contributing to a global mental health crisis. Like this situation with this pastor is being taken out of context. And they're attacking a woman when she's under a ministry, under that head. And how many times you You the head, and you have somebody on the pulpit with you right behind you, and you don't know this person. Come on now. You know this person. You know how they act. That's why you put them there. You put them there because they act like that. So now you want to pump your chest and do something that's really, really out of order, instead of moving away and maybe not shining the light on that person that you put up there. And that's the thing. It's like everybody's talking about that video in the wrong way, I think. They're looking at it in the same way we look at everything else. We're looking at it to blame the follower. You can't blame the follower. There's never been a time where a good leader would allow a follower to take a blame for anything when they're under their leadership. So a lot of people were in the comments stating that, this woman, she was always really loud in her worship. So it's quite clear that this is common, just like all these other times where we see these people just act in all kinds of ways. And then when it doesn't suit the person, they want to harp on the person and make an obstacle of the situation where there really shouldn't be a challenge. But it becomes challenging because now you have to justify why it was a challenge this time. Why was it an obstacle this time? And you really can't, because it's not going to be done in a way that's in agreement with formal logic, because formal logic has already concluded right from wrong and what should be and what shouldn't be. So when we say, oh, well, I'm going to follow you, we already have concluded that we're going to go the wrong way. We're going to go the wrong way. And we've concluded that, and we're fine with that. But then you have some people that say, well, you're going the wrong way. I'm not on board with that. I'm keep going this way because you're going the wrong way. And that's where you had when Jesus came, because it was like, okay, well, Adam's, he need help. Well, we're still going the wrong way. Send Jesus. Now we finally have the perfect man to mock, to pattern ourselves after, to mark, to follow, to, show us how to be. It's the example. So when it says mark the perfect man, that's what it's saying. And then you still have men who refuse to do that, but you have helpmeets that are innately doing their part and what they're supposed to do. However, we're only perpetuating the false narrative that women are leading, and they are not. The waywardness did not derive from women or even hurt women. It came from the head. Now, there's many men who are absent, so it's a little bit more important that that woman is really following after that one man, because he's the only one there. You have so many men incarcerated, so many men who are 6 feet under. You have so many men who are just not there for whatever reason, that it becomes absolutely essential for the remaining men who are there, who are in the spotlight, whoever the men are that remain, it is imperative that they behave in full alignment with what is called marking the perfect man, exempling yourself after the perfect man. And when you're not doing that, you need to be set down, because we don't have, it's too many women that's following men who are wayward, and they're hurting, and there's responses to that. And people are only perpetuating the idea that somehow this woman did something and she's wrong. And I'm so sick of it, because you're not understanding how that's contributing to a global mental health crisis. And then you turn around and try to say, well, no, because if a woman is supposed to help a man to be right and she's instead helping him be wrong, you have to, I know it's a paradox, but you have to still understand how you're contributing to a global mental health crisis, because the very help that she's supposed to be is not helpful in the manner in which would be positively contributing to progress. It's actually hindering. She's helping him hinder himself because he's leading in that way. And because he's leading in that way and she's helping him, then it keeps going darker. And it's very rare that you have a woman who is exercising the critical thinking skills to understand she must be more mindful and careful to only support positive energy and behavior. And when it's rare that you find that, you overemphasize it when it is there. And people can misconstrue that as saying, this person is always right, so follow them. Just because they said something right one time or two times or every now and again does not mean that they are always right and you should follow them. You should still continue to exercise critical thinking skills. And when that person is wrong, call it out. It's wrong. And more importantly, it's other men who need to be correcting these men. In these leadership roles, it was originally men. And the men need to stop trying to stifle the women, because the women are there to help. And the men are wayward and perpetuating waywardness. And the women need to step in and say, this is not the way we should go. So stop stifling them, support them. And men bond together and get those wayward men out of leadership roles. And if you can't get them out of the leadership roles, draw the followers. Draw the followers to a more sane mentality, something that's more in alignment with positive mental health, so that it will pull away the energy from all this negativity that's causing or leading to or contributing to a global mental health crisis. This is why I come on the show, because it's so rare that we are really making these connections. And people are like, well, he wants to be a leader, let him lead. No, not so. Well, they want to be executive administrator, let them be executive administrator. No. That's why businesses are failing. Too big to fail companies are failing. And these churches are going viral, and the schools are becoming so dangerous, and politics are so wayward and confusing, and the FBI and security clearances are all messed up because we have so much waywardness going on, because you're acquiescing to let negativity run and see its full fulfillment, when you should be stopping it. Even if you don't want to be in the forefront, even if you don't want to come from in the background. I know I didn't want to come out the background. I was fine being in the background and just, supporting the leaders that wanted to lead. We can't do that any longer, because the leaders that want to lead are abusing their authority and their power and their position, even though the only reason they have it is because we acquiesce. Those who know better acquiesce. They're like, oh, well, you can go ahead and do it. We need to stop that. I know a lot of people watching this have the ability to do that. And I'm just saying, do it, because mental health is physical wealth. See you next episode. Mental health is physical wealth.